Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Money Matters Top Tips for Success, where each and every day I bring on new business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives and have them share their top tips for success with you. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at AskAdamTorres to keep up with my book releases, book tour schedule, signings, all that other good stuff. Always love to connect with you there. And as always, if you'd like to apply to become a co-author of one of my upcoming books, just head on over to the website, moneymatterstoptips.com, and click on Become an Author to apply. All right, so today I have Ben Armstrong on the line, and he's a senior product manager for Zillow Offers over at the Zillow Group. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm excited to get more into what you're doing over at Zillow Group. But before we do that, let's get a little bit further into your background. So how did you get started in your career and in business?
The wrong way. So when I went to school, I actually thought I wanted to be an actor. And flying out, I grew up in a small town about 2 hours west of Chicago. Flying out to Los Angeles to pursue a bachelor's in theater to learn how to be an actor pretty quickly taught me that I didn't want to get into acting. So I took on some coursework in political science, learned a lot over 4 years, but the theme of sort of both fields of study after 4 years of being in them was that I didn't want to do either of them professionally. So really, I figured I could be unemployed anywhere in the world and started focusing my job search on cities I wanted to live in. And having grown up close to Chicago, I thought it'd be fun to head back home, and found a position with a company called McMaster Car Supply Company that was really taking a chance on people who didn't have a business background, bringing them into a management rotation and then showing them the ropes the way that company did business.
Wow. So I love your story. First off, you go from wanting to be an actor then to transition into business. I mean, a lot of people, I think, find their path the way you did, which is, you got to have some zigs and some zags along the way. And that's
Absolutely.
We learn from those. That being said, there's some younger people that are just starting out in their careers, and maybe they're in the middle of one of those zigs or zags or pivots, whatever we want to call them. What kind of advice do you give to that young person that's out there that's kind of trying to find their way?
I think what's guided me has been focusing more on what gets me excited and less on, the mechanism that delivers that excitement. So if I think back to myself 15 years ago, saying, in 15 years, you're going to be working in product management for tech companies, in my current case, working to revolutionize the real estate industry, I don't know that I would have thought that was terribly exciting. But the constant throughout the whole thing is that I really like the idea of connecting with an under-engaged customer base. And so having bought a home a few years ago and commiserated with people who have been through that same process, I think the American real estate buyer is a fairly underserved customer in terms of just the amount of joy that they're able to derive from interacting with the product. In this case, the product is buying and selling a home. And so that extends, prior to Zillow, I was at Amazon. That extends to working at Amazon and really thinking about, what we could deliver either technologically or operationally or some combination of both that would really make an under-engaged customer base happy. And, if I think back to 18-year-old Ben in Byron, Illinois, trying to figure out how to win each year's school fundraiser, the problems I was trying to solve are fundamentally the same. And so I think there's this thread of what gets me excited that has kept me going and has really turned into something interesting, rather than, knowing exactly how I wanted to derive that excitement.
I love that. And I don't know, the way you described it gets me excited. So let's, in terms of what you're doing present day in the real estate market, let's switch it up a bit. Let's talk a little bit more about Zillow Group. First, just a quick overview of the business.
Yeah, sure. So let me do the legal thing first and clarify that I'm not speaking on behalf of the company, nor am I speaking as a representative of Zillow Group, but certainly happy to share my experience. So, Zillow Group historically has been, for those of you who enjoy using the app, it's been a place where you go and you check up on the prices of homes. We've been more of a listing and referral marketplace than actually a driver of transactions. And so to date, the company has really made its mark in, we'd call it turning on the lights for consumers who didn't have information about what the value of their homes was or how to even go about buying and selling a home. Our mission for the last 15 years has been to expose that information increase sort of the transparency and the visibility that folks have into a fairly convoluted process and give people more power over their own mobility. And so that's what we're doing today as well. We are, with the advent of Zillow Offers, something that I'm particularly excited about is that when Zillow steps in and is actually sort of helping customers navigate the transaction process, the buying and selling of homes, rather than just giving them information and expecting them to act on it, we think we have the tools at our disposal and sort of the customer focus that's going to help people be willing to take the plunge, to make the move, to move on to the next part of their life or that next big exciting chapter that's waiting for them. And that's what gets me excited as well. So I think I mentioned a minute ago, delivering products that really excite customers or represent an underserved population. I think that there are a ton of people out there today who wish they could move or who get onto the Zillow app and dream about what their next home could be or their dream home, but then feel trapped by a process in an industry that keeps them where they are when they don't want to be there. And really what I'm excited about as my part of this journey is helping people to remove that feeling of being trapped and to give them both the courage and the tools to make the moves they need to make.
So you have a unique vantage point, both with your background, number one, working with big companies like Amazon and Zillow, and then obviously in the field that you're in now, as a product manager for Zillow. Any kind of trends you care to comment on, just in general, in the marketplace from your vantage point?
When you talk about the marketplace, are you talking sort of the talent marketplace?
Product development in real estate, and trying to give that experience to the buyer or the seller in that case, either or. Mm-hmm.
I think we see a lot of movement from sort of the big tech companies and even the big brokerage firms now, where we're all wrestling with this idea of how to do a better job by our customers. And what that means, what it is that the customer in a real estate marketplace wants. And I think that the industry as a whole has been a little bit devoid of that conversation. Now that's to say nothing, I think, of the quality of the work that real estate agents do, where, on an individual basis, people are obviously very engaged with what the need of the customer is, but the industry at large hasn't had this conversation. And I think what I'm seeing in trends across tech and traditional real estate is that we're finally starting to have that conversation. We're saying, what in the 21st century, what does the American real estate consumer expect in terms of the experience they have and the products they interact with? What are their goals, and how do we help enable those goals? And are those goals the same goals that existed 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago when the last major revisions to the industry were made? And we're trying to think ahead too. The way that, or the pace at which technology evolves today is such that we can't, set our sights on the next 10 years and expect that anything that we're going to build is going to last. So we're also trying to say, okay, well, what can we do today to help warm the industry up to this idea of mobility and warm the customer base up to the idea that they can make decisions for themselves? And then if we extrapolate on that, well, if we set that as the baseline and we assume that customer expectations are always going to be rising, what's the next set of expectations that we have to start designing for, and how can we get ahead of that today to make sure that whatever we build is really going to knock it out of the park for the customer?
I love that thought process, and to me, the real estate end and the obviously the advice is typically delivered in different manners per se, but real estate and the whole fintech industry, financial advisors, what they're going through, and all of these things, those conversations you mentioned, I think in financial services in general have been pretty devoid for a long time, and it's just inspiring to me to hear and to see them had now over many different verticals. So I think a lot of exciting stuff, and the end result to me is going to be the end users are going to be much more appreciated and appreciative of the hard work you're doing, because it's going to deliver results for them.
Yeah, I agree. I think the exciting thing is that we have a whole bunch of different customers, and we're trying to satisfy them all at the same time, and that's a really difficult thing to do, whether it's Bob down the street who's trying to buy a house for the 10th time, or somebody fresh out of school who's considering buying for the first time, or even real estate agents who have this vested interest in helping their clients, what tools and processes and services can we build for them that are going to allow them to accelerate their businesses? And so we have this diverse client base. We think we have the tools and the knowledge to deliver on it. But it's this massively complex space with a bunch of different expectations. And I think what comes with that is a similarly massive amount of potential. And so, you mentioned working at big tech companies. I think what big tech companies offer is massive potential for somebody who's willing to step into the space, get their hands dirty, and do some of the legwork to solve these complex problems. And that's what gets me excited.
That's awesome. Well, hey, Ben, really appreciate you coming on the show. If somebody wants to learn more about Zillow Group in general, what's the best way for them to research?
Well, I'd say head on over to Zillow.com. We've got, Zillow has a whole bunch of, whether you're a prospective investor, a current investor, or just somebody who wants to poke around and learn more about whether or not it's time to buy or sell a home. It's a great website. It's one that I'm admittedly on several times a week. And I'd encourage anyone else to check it out as well.
Perfect. Well, hey, Ben, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your background and all the great work you're doing over at Zillow Group as a product manager, as a senior product manager. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, leave me a review on the Apple iTunes Store, do all those great things we do to support our podcasters. I really do appreciate it. And Ben, thanks again for coming on the show.